of the Career Lab and Alumni Professional Development. And I'm broadcasting live from the beautiful campus here, University of Arizona here in Tucson, Arizona. I'm excited for tonight's webinar, The Power Hijack with Ms. Teresa Garcia. Excuse me. Are you preparing for an interview or a high-risk meeting? Do you find yourself frustrated with power dynamics at work? By the end of this webinar, you will be able to better understand how your brain can hijack your power in situations like these. Further, you will be able to recognize triggers and learn how to reclaim your power. This webinar is a part of a free alumni career webinar series from the Alumni Career Lab that provides monthly conversations with experts about a variety of industry and professional development topics. Today's presentation is being recorded and it will be archived on the Alumni Association website for you to access on demand. To find other links and more material about the Alumni Career Lab, please go to arizonaalumni.com/careers. Questions are welcome at any time during tonight's event. Type them into the chat box on the right side of your screen, wherever you think of them, or whenever you think of them. Teresa will answer questions at the end of the webinar as well. If you're on Twitter tonight, tweet at us about this webinar or other career topics using the hashtag Hijack. We'd love to hear from you. Now, a little bit about our speaker tonight. Teresa is the founder of Trust Leadership and Growth LLC, a woman and minority-owned executive coaching and strategic change consultancy based in Arizona. She is an expert in brain-centric leadership, coaching, and organization transformation strategy. Teresa holds multiple certificates and a Master of Science in Organizational Development and Applied Neural Leadership. She is also a graduate of the University of Arizona Eller College of Management. I'd like to give a huge thanks to Teresa for taking the time to be with us and for her to share her expertise with the U of A alumni tonight. Now I'll turn things over to her, and she'll be able to tell you a little bit more about herself and walk you through her presentation. So Teresa, it's all yours.
Thank you, Cedric. I appreciate it. Hello, Wildcats. It is so great to be here to talk with you. Since my graduation from the U of A, I have been engaged in a number of organizations and companies, and believe you me, I have had my share of hijack moments. Those times when I was in a meeting, wanted to answer a question but became tongue-tied, or was in a meeting and all of a sudden found that someone had taken credit for something I had done, or gosh, name it, I think I've experienced it. So that really pushed me forward to think about why does this go on? What happens to people? What happens to me in the moment? Which is why I pursued the study of organization development and significant study in organizational psychology, followed by training on applied neural leadership, which is a lot of breakthrough sessions and learning in the last 10 years. In addition to that, I studied transformational leadership and coaching at Georgetown University and have a professional certified coach certificate and credential from the International Coach Federation. In this session, what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk with you about three-step process. This three-step process will tell you what happens at work and how your brain will hijack your power. Then what triggers that hijack, and then great tidbits and things that you can do right there in the moment to reclaim your power. I wish that someone had given me that opportunity and said, hey, Teresa, can I get 3 steps to help you? Are you interested? I would have said, yes, I am. In this session, I want you to know that after each of these areas, I will stop and have a chance for all of you to ask whatever questions you have. I want to ensure that you get the learning that you're able to take away from this, tools and knowledge that you can use anytime, whether at work or in a high-powered social situation. So let's get started. Ah, yes, the famous amygdala hijack. I think we've all experienced it at least once in our lives, right? But what is it? Why is it? You know, how does it disempower you at work, and what can you do about it? Well, let's start with what's happening underneath that hijack. Sadness, anger, fear, joy, and disgust. These are all of Riley's emotions from Pixar's Inside Out. The movie happened a couple of years ago. Explained how our emotions actually hijack our behavior. It was targeted towards 6, 7, and 8-year-olds. And folks, if they can get it, I assure you, we can too. So let's start with how the brain is wired. We call this our social brain, okay? Lieberman and Eisenberg in 2009 did a study on the social brain, and what we've learned is that our brains are soft-wired, if you will, every one of us on the planet, to always be scanning the horizon constantly, to enable us to move toward reward and away from threat. The focus here is on survival. So we instinctively do this. This occurs before we've had the opportunity for conscious thought. So let me give you some examples. Moving toward reward. Think about things like physical pleasure, being accepted in a group, cooperating with other people, being treated fairly, enjoying a good reputation. Those are all things that trigger endorphins, make us feel good about ourselves, increase our confidence, and actually then open up our creativity. Conversely, away from threat, these are things such as physical or emotional pain. Now, this can be perceived or real experience. When I say that, the studies have shown that our brain barely changes at all with the fact of being either physically assaulted or being emotionally assaulted. What do I mean by that? Emotional assault would be things like being rejected from the group, not being accepted in a group, grief or loss or the perception of loss, being treated unfairly, or having a bad social rep. These are all things that make us feel left out of the group and make us feel rejected. And we've done the studies to show that those pain points show up in our brains just like physical pain. So boiling down a very complex limbic system into 4 areas, so you can see what's actually happening. The first thing that happens, right, is we start with an emotion. It triggers what we call the amygdala, which is the fight, flight, or freeze. So what's happening here, folks, is that this is all based on whatever experiences you've already had in the past. So if you've learned to be fearful of being in a group or speaking in a group, this will automatically trigger the fear of speaking in group. If you were not picked, let's say, in the schoolyard to play on a team, you'll always have that hesitation of not being picked. This is why, like little children who have no problem at all, little ones, getting in front of a group and singing, it's because they haven't learned to fear it yet. But once we've learned to fear, that trigger is always in our system, and then we have to learn to get around it. So let me tell you the 4 steps. The first one is with this amygdala, you have an experience. The subconscious mind experiences something. Information then flows directly over to our hippocampus, and this is triggering that memory. Is this something to fear? Should I move away from it? Or is it something to enjoy? Should I move toward it? That then will release feelings or hormones, right? Which, for example, cortisol. We've heard about that. This is the stress hormone. So if it's something to be feared, or we think it's something to be feared, all of a sudden cortisol gets triggered. This goes into our hypothalamus, right? Which is the central, it's central to initiating a threat response. So this is where you get that adrenaline rush. Now, this is all happening before we even have any conscious understanding that this is occurring. And this was built for us to help us survive. So the hijack occurs here between the hypothalamus and the prefrontal cortex, which means if we trigger here our emotions and we immediately react to that emotion, we've been hijacked. If you learn to understand and feel when you're being triggered, you can bypass that emotion, bring it forward to the prefrontal cortex, which is the front of your brain, the area of rationalization and reason, and say, hey, no worries, I don't have to worry about this. This is not an attack. I can get through this and it'll reduce your anxiety. So let's try this as an understanding. We're going to call this the handy, yes, pun intended, brain model. This brain model was created by Dr. Daniel Siegel. You can read about it, great reading, by the way, in his book called Mindsight, The New Science of Personal Transformation. This is what I'm going to ask you to do. Seriously, hold up your hand, either one, left or right. When you hold up your hand, that spinal cord is, you can visualize in your wrist. The base of your skull is the bottom of the palm. Your brain stem is right there in the middle. If you were to fold over your fingers, do it now with me, just fold your fingers over. If you look at that and turn your hand to the side, sideways view, now you're looking at half of your brain. The prefrontal cortex is that part in front of your fingers. Now, if you allow the hijack to occur, flip your fingers up, boom, right? This is, you've been flipped. You flipped your lid, you've been hijacked. I'm going to show you today how you can feel those triggers, stop it when it happens, and regain control so that you don't lose control or give away power at work or in social situations. So, as I shared, our brains are constantly scanning the horizon. They're looking for, first of all, what's got the situation? Am I in the middle of a job interview? Do I have conflict with my boss? Is there peer conflict? Am I feeling intimidated? Is there authority there? Am I being well received? Am I getting a reward? Whatever is happening, your brain is constantly analyzing the situation. It's focusing and paying attention on either the reward or the threat. Because what it's looking for there is, if you are feeling reward and there is no threat present, what actually happens is it opens up those areas in your brain to allow for creativity, productivity, and collaboration. If there's a threat perceived here in the appraisal area, then we're going to take some kind of response, right? So the experience can be either fear, fleeing or running away. And actually this happens very quickly, and it's in our own brains. If we believe that we can fight and win, we will stay and fight. If we feel like we can't possibly win and there's an exit, we run. If we can't fight and we can't run, then we literally freeze in place like a deer in the headlights. And all of this is happening in a split second. But you know it's occurring because our pulses race. Many of us feel a flush in our brains or our faces, in our ears. We feel our heart pounding. We might have the sweats, or we might get cotton breath, right, or cotton mouth. These are all different emotional, physiological responses to this threat. So what can you do about it? Well, this is what I do. I put on my tiara. So what this means is I take 3 letters, right, to reframe the situation. We can literally reframe it in the moment. 1, T, take an alternative approach. If the approach you're taking or planning to take causes you anxiety, like some people really are anxious standing up in front of a group. So the question is, well, is there an alternative strategy? Could I send an email? Could I talk to people one-on-one? What else could I do? So it's considering what is an alternative approach to this situation. Always check your assumptions. This is something I share with everyone I coach. Make certain that you're not on autopilot. Reframe the situation and say, is this the way I have to do it? Or is there truly another approach that is less threatening? I, improve the situation. What that means is make yourself more comfortable. Make certain that you have, let's say you are going to give a presentation and you're in a room, right, with other people. Make sure you've got some water, you've got air, you have set the environment up so you feel better, you've got support, a support network in there. These are little things that you can do when presenting. But whatever the situation, consider the I. Is there a way for me to improve the immediate surroundings so that I feel more comfortable? A, attention is to selectively focus. What I mean by that is lots of times you can plant a positive or a friend into the environment. You can reach out to someone else to answer questions and get the situation moving. So it's focus on not the negative aspects or perhaps a heckler or somebody else who brings you down, but instead focus on what brings you positivity. Reappraise, R. Reappraise the situation, and that means to think for yourself, hey, am I really looking at this through a negative filter? Am I perhaps just engaging in my own fear? Is this a story I made up in my head? I mean, what if? You've heard of people who have done the old standby of imagining people in the audience in their underwear. Those are just ways to reappraise and say, hey, what is this filter by which I am getting myself all kicked up? The next under A is adopt a positive expression, which means seriously, literally choosing to be positive, choosing to win, choosing to tell yourself, I'm confident, I know more about this than anyone else, I am going to do okay. And then the last, which is not part of Tiara, but something I'm going to show you here today, is what we call adopting a power pose. All right, short chat. Anybody else out there besides me ever experience a workplace amygdala hijack? What happened? Let's take a moment. Use your chat box. I see a few people typing fast. Santiago, and knock it out there. Let's see here. Okay. And I was learning a new technical skill and had a freeze response. Okay. Awkward. All right, Santiago, thank you. Yep, work when I'm learning how to train other people. Yes, definitely. And Alyssa, I'm going to wait for you. I panicked in an interview and my brain froze. Yes, ma'am, it happens. It happens to the best of us. All right, let's go through and figure out what's going on. All right, let's talk about now, you understand how the brain works and how when it's talking about this, it's truly happening first in your emotion, then it goes through the process to say, hey, have I experienced this before? If I have, do I need to fear it, or is it something that's rewarding? And then and only then does it go into your prefrontal cortex to say, okay, we're good. However, if you don't learn how to do that and get control, you will just definitely get hijacked. So in this section now, we're going to talk about what triggers that hijack. Okay, based on, in particular, the greatest advances in applied neuroscience in the last 10 years, there are 5 significant social triggers that occur anytime we gather in a group of people. So the first one is belonging. This is the extent to which the person, let's just say I in this case, the extent to which I feel safe, accepted, and included. If you feel like you belong, then immediately trust goes up. If you feel like you don't belong, immediately your brain puts you on defensive posturing. That's there for your survival. So what do I mean by that? And how strong is it? It is incredibly powerful. The need to belong. We are belonging creatures. This is why, it starts off and when you're little kids, it's powerful in high school, it's powerful in middle school, goodness knows it's powerful in college, as well as companies. So the smallest little element thing can make us feel like we belong, which will increase trust. As small as all of us here, we're all part of the alumni. We're all wildcats. So understanding that we're all wildcats, we all belong, we all carry the same flag, if you will, then immediately trust goes up. There's an us and a them. We don't like ASU. Okay, let's go on. The next one is autonomy. This comes online when we're about 18 months to 2 years old. This is when we say no. We start to realize we're individuals. Some of you with little ones have seen that one and know exactly what I'm talking about. Well, this need for autonomy varies different levels within each of us. Some of us need to have a lot of autonomy. Some of us would prefer to have lesser autonomy and are stronger about belonging. But these five, all five, are at work all the time. So autonomy is the extent to which I control my own destiny. So how do you raise autonomy? You give people choice, which makes them feel as though they have more control. How do you take away someone's control? Take away their choice. So when we're in work situations where we're being told what to do, we don't have any choice in our work or choice in our decision making about what's happening to our work, automatically we're going to be in defensive posturing because our sense of control has been ripped away from us. Predictability. Predictability provides a sense of certainty. We're constantly scanning the horizon. The reason for this is that if there is predictability, then the threat is low. So if the threat is low, then I can free up my brain to allow for creativity and collaboration. If threat is high, then I'm going to focus on protecting myself from the threat. We've seen this translated into things like Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right? We got to make certain that we're in a safe place and we're eating and we're drinking, we're getting what we need, right? Another place like this is if the situation is highly uncertain, like you've just been part of a new team or a new leader just came in, or you've just been through a restructure, your organization is being reorganized. It's no longer predictable. So obviously your body is going to throw you onto high alert until you feel a sense of belonging, until you feel a sense of greater autonomy. And then this rolls into status, the big S. This is the perception of my place in the pecking order. Some people say, oh, I'm not worried about it. Yes, we are. Status is ingrained in us as a survival mechanism. Why is that? It's because people of higher status tend to live longer than people of lower status, right? People of higher status get greater belonging. People of higher status have greater autonomy or choice. People of higher status have greater predictability of their surroundings. So we all seek it. Yes, in varying levels, but it's always present. And the last one, a big one here, is fairness. This is the sense that things are fair and equitable. Each one of us has our own fairness factor. And when I say that, I mean whatever is fair is something in our own minds, right? It's emotional and it's rational, heavily weighted on emotional. So if you're feeling like something is not fair, it's going to send a trigger all the way through your system and you're going to be on high alert. If someone else is saying it's not fair, it's a highly emotionally charged sense. So I tell you now, don't try to respond to that with all this rationality like, yes, the cookies are cut in half equally. See, my half is as big as your half. That's not the point. People will not respond to that. You've got to address the emotional issue. Let me give you some examples. The social trigger of belonging. These are areas of belonging that are part of my world that I belong to. I belong to the U of A, the alumni group. Right? I'm a wildcat. I'm also belong to Georgetown University. I'm also a Hoya. I'm a big-time Cardinal fan living here in Arizona, and I'm a graduate of Pepperdine, so I feel aligned and associated with my Pepperdine colleagues. So these are my four, okay? And they're important to me. Now, each one of you has your own associated belonging, but these things are powerful, right? They really trigger the need for belonging. We avoid rejection. It's a survival instinct. And as I said, belonging, just knowing that all of you are part of the U of A, increases my trust in you, just purely by affiliation. One example I did is I was working with a group of teachers. These teachers decided to have a fun softball game, right? So they divided into teams, and they were going to play this great softball game. Well, just before the game, the t-shirts for one of the groups came in, so they all got to wear their t-shirts. Unfortunately, the other team's t-shirts didn't come in, so they didn't have team t-shirts. They all played the game, they all finished, and then a week later, I debriefed with them, I talked with them about how things were going, And those folks who had the t-shirts all expressed joy and fun and how great it was. And interestingly, the team members who did not have the t-shirts talked about their feeling of being rejected, of not being belonging, not being part of the team. And this only had to do with an experience that was not planned. It was simply that their t-shirts didn't come in. So it may seem simple, but it's incredibly powerful. And this is why, media and NFL teams and all of that work so hard to ensure an alignment and affiliation. Never underestimate the power of belonging. All right, let's talk about the divisive or the divisive power of belonging. Anyone remember this one? The dress, okay, the infamous dress. I don't know which one you saw. I'll ask you in a minute to tell me. But some people saw the gold and the white. Other people saw the black and the blue. Folks, there were over 1 million hits on this situation alone in the first week that it was out. It was crazy. Then, so this thing goes viral, right? It's all fun, banter. And then some things turned ugly. There were a number of people who started slamming the other group, right? Those who did not see the colors that they saw online, on Twitter feeds. It was amazing. Now, these debates ensued. Relationships were on fire. There were a number of things that occurred over this simple thing. The truth of it simply was the difference in the human color perception, right? Which is part we've all discovered through neuroscience. It has to do with cones and rods. There was nothing you could do. Those people who saw white and gold just saw the white and gold. The people that were black saw black and blue, just saw the black and blue. So this thing went viral, powerful, like I said, divided a lot of people. The latest one, right, was, what was that one? Laurel or Yanni. So did you see white and gold, or did you see blue and black? Let's see. Quickly, fire away on your chat line. Which color did you see? If you saw it? Oh, you saw both, Santiago. Wow. Okay. Didn't see it? Okay. Blue for some, both, blue, okay. All right, let's try the other one. The Yanni situation, Laurel versus Yanni. That totally has to do with the way people's wired in their hearing system. Did you hear Laurel or did you hear Yanni? Yanni, seriously? Nancy. I swear I only heard Laurel. I'm dying to hear the Yanni. All right, let's keep going. So here's some examples at work of these 5 social triggers, right? We talk about belonging, things like alumni, being part of the in-group, right? Being a team member, teamwear, team clothing, like I talked about with the t-shirts. Logo is incredibly powerful. Now, being a part of that, being able to wear that, ties down to a core fear, a core issue of ours as human beings we call choosing and being chosen. When I say that, some of you might digress immediately back to those young childhood days, right? When you were either chosen for teams or not chosen for teams. This choosing and being chosen hooks in right into our basic survival mechanism. It is incredibly painful to be excluded, and it's incredibly wonderful to be included. So at work, understand that that's what's going on. The autonomy, things that show up are things like decision and budget authority. Do you have it or do you not? Are you feeling like you're being micromanaged? Are the people taking away your control? Some people I've seen it come out within telework versus working in the office. Are you in? Are you out? The predictability things are things like reorganizations, layoffs, mergers, joint ventures, being acquired, right? Or becoming part of a new team or having a new team leader. That will significantly trigger predictability. The status, hey, we've all seen these, right? Corner offices, the desk type, Office versus cube. What's your car? What kind of car do you drive? Do you have a house or do you live in an apartment? Do you wear designer clothes or are you wearing discount clothing? You know, are you sitting on mahogany row or not? And of course, fairness. Things like pay. Is the pay fair? Do I have equal or equitable, let's say, bonuses? What about work assignments? You know, do you get it? Does it feel like equitable? Are you first shift versus third shift? These are all just sort of examples. Why don't you send off to me some other examples that you've experienced or seen in your work environment relative to one of the 5 social triggers? Love to see it on chat line. Any other examples? Alyssa's got her fingers madly typing. Anyone? Okay, Alyssa, thank you. Yep, constant reorganization and layoffs. Definitely. Alyssa, that one, you know, the reorganizations and layoffs, that triggers all 5. Now remember, anytime any one of these is triggered, you're going to go into defensive posturing, which is not going to be creative. It's not going to be collaborative. It's going to be survival. In a reorganization or a layoff, all 5 of these are triggered. So it's going to take some time or a little bit of practice to work through and get your mind set and get better in a more strong position. Okay. Now, this one I wanted you to see it. It's hysterical, but we were unable to get the link to work. But I encourage all of you. It's only about 2 minutes. It's a TED Talk by Franz de Waal. He uses little capuchin monkeys to explain the power of fairness. In this example, they had a couple of capuchin monkeys, and they had a series. What they did was they would have the capuchin monkey take a rock and give the rock back to the attendant, and if he did that well, then he immediately was rewarded with a grape. Love it. Everyone's doing that. It's working great. And then just arbitrarily, the attendant instead of gives this little monkey on the left rewards him with a cucumber. Now, there's nothing wrong with a cucumber or a grape. It's just different than the grape that the other monkey got. This little monkey on the left just freaks out, throws the cucumber back at the attendant, shakes his cage and is going nuts. He starts checking the stone to see if it actually is a stone, if he's doing everything properly. So there's nothing intrinsically wrong between the cucumber and the grape. It's just that it's different than the grape and therefore not fair. And this is what I mean by don't try to apply rationality. It's an emotional trigger. If you get a chance, check it out. It's hysterical. Okay. Why is that? What's going on underneath these triggers? Well, what's going underneath are fears. And we have one of the social psychologists, Maxie Maltby, identify what's called the 4 fatal fears. I want you to walk through this with me and see if any of these trigger a bell for you. So the first is the fear of losing triggers a strong need to win. The fear of rejection triggers the strong need to be accepted, and that means avoiding conflict or avoiding challenging a group. The fear of emotional discomfort, and that means all those emotions we saw that Riley had in Pixar: anger, fear, sadness, frustration, crying, you know, any of those kind of situations. What we'll do instead, it will drive the need to control. So if we're controlling for that fear, we do things like avoiding situations where emotions are exhibited, avoiding emotional conflict, smoothing over, deflecting, rescuing other people. And then there is the fear of being wrong, which then drives the need to be right. How do you be right? You dominate the situation. You become argumentative, arrogant, or you overly control the situation. So when I'm coaching my leaders, what I share with them is if you're seeing any of these blue behaviors, like these things, the need to be accepted, for instance, the need to control, the need to be right, the need to win, Newton was right. Everything does have an equal and opposite reaction, right? So If you're seeing that or experiencing a leader or a peer demonstrating those strong blue needs, what that's clearly telling you is they are experiencing an equal level of fear. So you see someone, as an example, trying to dominate and control the situation. Okay, that's telling me then, and it can tell you easily, this person is fearful of emotional discomfort or fearing being wrong. So what do then? You don't respond to that blue behavior, right? The exhibit behavior. You look to see, how can I alleviate that person's fear? Therefore, if I can help to alleviate the fear, then they can let go of demonstrating that negative behavior. And for yourselves, if you're watching yourself or you notice that you choose one of these blue behaviors frequently, I strongly recommend that you self-evaluate and think about, what is that fear? What's one of the 4 fatal fears that I'm trying to avoid? Okay, quick moment. What's your workplace 4 fatal fear? Anyone? Confrontation, thank you. Yeah, yep. Emotional discomfort, exactly. And these triggers, folks, by the way, they're triggered way long time ago when you're kids. What the research has told us is, most of these these triggers are placed within us before the age of 8, when we are our most vulnerable and we're trying to survive in our family of origin. We learn how to survive. We learn which of those triggers to avoid. And now, as we grow older, those triggers are there. They're still there, and they will always be. But what we learn to do is to recognize what's going on and to recognize that we're no longer that vulnerable child. We're now an adult, and we can choose a different behavior. Anne said all of them. Okay, Anne. Thank you for being so honest. I appreciate all of you contributing. Thank you. All right. One of the first things that you can do is self-care. I know you've all heard it before. I heard it and I used to blow it off, and I don't do it anymore. I really do take self-care. And why is that? Well, any one of these 4 elements, we're going to put you in a situation which can make you vulnerable to a trigger. The first one is being hungry. If you're hungry, sad, lonely, or tired, any one of those 4 things, automatically your brain is telling you to go into defensive posturing because you're vulnerable. So, in particular, before making an important decision, before going into a high stakes or high risk conversation, make certain that you've slept the night before, make certain that you are fed, you've got some nuts or whatever you need to keep you going, so that you're in a good, solid place. And, do what you can, obviously, to bring a support group around you to help you to get through times of sadness and to help you to get through times of loneliness. But understand that these are always in work, just like the brain that's scanning, and they will increase your vulnerability to a trigger. All right, we're going to go into some quick ways here to reclaim that power. Now you know how your brain hijacks your power at work. You understand now what triggers that hijack. Let's say, what can I do about it? Let's do it. All right, what we're going to first do here is power poses. These power poses were created and researched and reported by Dr. Amy Cuddy in her book and in her recent TED Talk called The Benefit of Power Posing Before a High-Stakes Social Evaluation. So this is something that I do myself and I share with my coachees. I help them to assume a power pose prior to a high-risk situation. The first one is called the Wonder Woman. Okay, the Wonder Woman, what that means is she plants her feet solidly on the ground, right? And she's got 2 feet planted, which is important, right? Hands on hips. Anyone remember this one? You can do it right now where you are. Stand up and power pose. Do the Wonder Woman. I'm going to do it right now. Feel that? So what's going on there, folks, when you're standing with both feet planted on the ground, hands on hips, you're making yourself big. You're taking up space. And on top of that, you're making your feet are solid on the ground. When your feet are solid on the ground and your hands are on your hips like that, what that's doing is it's sending, again, signals through the brain. Those signals trigger those endorphins, right? What this happens as well is I start to feel confident. That confidence races through your body and you can't help but exude that sense of confidence. So I always say, strike the pose, power pose. This is the Wonder Woman. All right. Or perhaps you enjoy the Boss. Ever seen one of these? Simply stand on the ground, put your two hands on the table. Again, what you're doing is you're taking up space. You're saying, I am here, I am confident, I am the boss. This again sends out confidence vibes. We have this thing called mirror neurons, M-I-R-R-O-R, mirror neurons. And what happens with this is our bodies are constantly scanning the environment. We're picking up on the vibes of other people. This is how it's possible for us to work across cultures without truly understanding the full language, because language, written word and verbal language, comes on last in our human development. All right, it's the last thing. This is why when babies can connect with their parents, they understand who's talking, they pick up on the sounds, what's happening. You know if you're a parent, if your child is sad or whatever, because we are mirroring what's going on. In addition to this, folks, this is when you have someone who is smiling at you, let's say, but they're giving off a vibe that is not nice, right? You're not feeling the love. This is incongruence, and our mirror neurons are picking up on this. Again, you should understand that your body is constantly taking in this information and giving off this information. Here's another one. I call it too cool for school. Okay, once again, you can see laying back or sort of sitting back in a chair, right? You're again, taking up space, opening up your arms. What you're saying is, I'm confident, I'm here, I'm good. And those vibes will also translate. Obviously, select the pose that's appropriate for the situation. And there is always the rock star. Some people call it the starfish. Some people call it the rock star. This is throwing your arms in the air, legs apart. Woo! And in this, what I tell to my coachees is, think about a time just prior to going into a high stakes situation. Think about a time when you literally rocked it. You were perfect. You did awesome. Everything went the way you planned. Then assume the position, meaning rock star position. This is going to shoot confidence all the way through your system. It's going to get all of the cycles going like we talked about. You're going to be remembering that great time when you really did rock it, and that vibe will be exuded. Remember that one at the next job interview or meeting that you attend. Are you feeling it? Are you feeling the power? I want to know quickly on this chat, which position are you taking? What do you like? The rock star, the boss, Wonder Woman, or too cool for school? All right, Wonder Woman, rock star. Seriously, it works. Do it just before any of those sessions or any of those meetings. All right, so we talked about the high power poses. There are seriously low power poses. So I'm going to challenge you, check yourself. Are you doing any of the behaviors below? So crossing, making yourself small, folding up, folding over. There's a lot of research now. They're concerned about all the time we spend bending over our cell phones, right? Texting or whatever, because doing that is actually a low power inducing environment where it makes the body feel small. Not good, right? Not positive. So think about that the next time you're in a situation or a meeting. Watch your behavior. Which are you giving off? Low power or high power? Makes a lot of difference. You're talking all the time, whether you're talking with your mouth or not. Okay, so in this session, we have learned how your brain hijacks your power at work. We've learned some triggers, what triggers that hijack, and I've given you a couple of ways to reclaim your power in the moment. So now the question is, what questions can I answer? What questions do you have that you'd like to know more? Let's open up our chat line. Art is typing. And also, I invite our hosts, Cindric, as well, Aviva, if you have questions, please feel free. All right, Art, you're the first one up. I can see typing. What's happening? What pose, Art asked the group, what pose would be appropriate for an interview? Well, now, Art, I wouldn't do it in the interview, but just before the interview, definitely do a rock star. Definitely, another thing you could do is breathe. This one really does work, by the way, and I'll tell you why. If you stop and breathe slowly 4 times, deep in, deep out, deep in, exhale out. If you do that slowly 4 times, what it does is it slows down your heart rate. When you slow down your heart rate, that triggers signals in the body, which will slow down the pulses in the brain and move the brain into your rational, which is the prefrontal cortex. So breathing deeply, Art, before the interview, doing a rock star pose, awesome, that works. And then in the interview, you want to, if you're sitting, you want to sit squarely with both feet on the ground and your both hands touching your knees. And what that is it simulates the same element as Rockstar where you're grounded. And all of this will help you to breathe and help you to regain that power in the interview. Thanks for asking. Who else has a question?
Teresa, this is Cindric. Is there a such thing as having too much confidence going into the interview and showing too much confidence?
Well, Cindric, you're a professional. Ask that back to you. You're in charge of career. What would you say?
I would say no. There's never. I don't personally believe there is such thing as having too much confidence and showing too much confidence. I think that bodes well for you, especially when you're going in an unknown situation. You want to have more confidence because there are going to be times where you're probably going to be tested in that interview or in that situation. So having more confidence is always better than having none.
Exactly. It's my belief. And here's what I always say. Self-awareness is key. Those mirror neurons pay attention to your body. So when I say that, if you're communicating, and I call this with my coachees, impact versus intent. If you're not getting the impact, right, that you expected, right, then it's time to switch in the moment. So it's being self-aware. It's watching the body language of the other people. It's being able to shift in the moment. So to me, confidence is being confident with who you are, what you have to offer, and also great self-awareness, emotional intelligence, read what's happening in the room. Martina, if for some reason you can't do a power pose to regain your power, what other techniques do you suggest to regain power during a meeting? Breathe first. Martina, that just slightly breathe. When they used to tell us, count to 10, it's like that. It's what you're doing is you're slowing down the heart rate. That slows the thinking. It stops the amygdala hijack, and it allows you to take a rational, choiceful response. That's a little trick that works every time. So I would definitely advise that one. Any other questions that people have? Love to answer. Okay, I'll give you a couple that I've heard from my coaching clients. So I've had a couple people say, in a meeting, in fact, I had one today who said, I just want my boss, who will remain nameless, I just want my boss to do to do this. And so I've checked and said, what is it you're actually trying to achieve? What is it that you want from this person? More importantly, what is it that you can offer? Think of when you're going into an interview or you're in a meeting, what is it that you're offering? Because all of us with good intent want to, right, go back to belong, right? We want autonomy or choice. We want to ensure predictability of the environment. We want to feel somewhat in control, and we want things to be fair. So if you're experiencing a reorganization, or you're experiencing a feeling in the room like it's not fair, what you do is, I say, name it to tame it. In your brain, in that moment, quietly to yourself, just say, I'm feeling frustrated. I'm feeling irritated. Name the emotion. If you name the emotion in your head, that also stops the amygdala hijack. It takes you back to your prefrontal cortex, the PFC, and enables you to be able to make a rational decision or a rational choice. Okay, those are ways to stop that hijack. So, and it's knowing yourself, it's knowing your own triggers and your own body. Some of us get a knot in our stomach when things are going wrong. Some of us start to feel ourselves flush, or we have a hard time breathing. This is because your body knows, before your prefrontal cortex, before your consciousness, your body is always taking in data. And that's why you hear then and read stories about, 75, 80% of communication is nonverbal. It's because our bodies are constantly giving off data and constantly receiving data. So even though you can't rationally decide what's going on, if you're feeling it, believe it. That's the gut check. It's because it's really happening. It's really quite arrogant and egotistical to think you can name and know everything. We don't. Our bodies are wired to tell us first for our survival. So what I tell my coaching clients is trust yourself. Trust yourself first. Believe yourself first. Understand that your body's not going to lie to you. Then understand that, hey, what's going on? Is this an old trigger? Is this something that was planted in me when I was a kid? Or is this for real? Do I need to be paying attention? So these are things that you could practice, you can learn how to manage and do. Any other questions? Cindric or Aviva, do you have anything?
If I do have one question for you that I've heard in going through kind of body language training that I want to ask you and see if you have an answer for me. What's the most honest part of your body?
What's the most honest part of your body?
Yes.
Wow, that's interesting. I don't know. What's the most what is it to you?
So I've been told that it's your feet.
Wow. Why is that, Cindric? Why do you say?
When it comes to having a conversation and speaking to someone, your feet are your most honest part because they oftentimes point in the direction that has your attention or where you want to go. So if you've ever noticed when you're in a conversation with someone, oftentimes you're facing them dead on. But when you're trying to break away from that conversation, you slightly turn to kind of give the hint without actually saying anything. And it's your feet that are turning and not your head.
Well, that's fascinating. It is.
Something that was brought up.
And speaking of that, other body signals to be watching for are crossed legs or bodies that are turned away from you, right? That's a protective move. When you see people standing in front with their hands, together right in front of them, in front of themselves, that's a protective maneuver, so you know that they're feeling uncomfortable, right? So that's why when I'm talking with any of my clients, I say, look, if you want to raise the environment and make it more safe for people in the room, right? Then think about these 5 elements, these 5 social triggers that we talked about. And make certain that you're doing well for the other person, right? Have you made people feel like they belong? Have you included them? The simplest things of bringing people on board when you're onboarding into a new organization, like teamwear, right? Or we all share the same pens or something, right? Have you given people enough choice? Raising that sense of choice. My goodness, if you're going through reorg as an example, give people as many choices as you can. Right? The predictability, if you don't know what's going to happen, but there's a little bit you can share it. right? Because we all figure out how to survive with as much information as we can, right? We're all pretty adult and working toward that. And then we have status, right? Here's an example of status that you may not be aware of. You know, when people give you free advice, they may say that advice that you didn't ask for, what happens in that moment is the person who is giving the advice is actually assuming a status above you, putting you in a lower situation of status. That's the perception that's going on. So immediately you're going to feel, if you're the person receiving this advice, in a defensive posture because you didn't ask for it, right? Now, so what I always share with folks is that's why they tell you don't give people advice, right, unless they're asking for coaching or asking for consultative advice. Because when you do that, you're automatically putting them in a one-down situation. With the fairness issue, gosh, we've seen it all the times with kids in particular, but fairness is usually not resulting from a rational argument. You've got to address what's the emotional loss that's going on. Okay, so those five. Remember that those five are always in work, all the time. Anytime we gather in group, they're always there. And remember how divisive the situations can be when people don't belong in something that's as simple and unpredictable, like, you know, what you hear, Laurel versus Yanni, or what you see, white and gold or blue and black. So this concludes what I was going to share with you today. I encourage you to check out that little capuchin monkey TED Talk. It's hysterical, but it really drives the point home. Remember to check in and take a look at these materials and reflect on what's your fatal fear that gets you going and trips your trigger. Make certain that you take care of yourself, that you stay satiated, you know, belong, and you keep a support group around you, and that you don't make major decisions when you're extremely tired. Okay, we talked about the power poses, lots of fun, but they actually do work. If you want to know more about it, check out Dr. Amy Cuddy's work, her TED Talk or an HBR. Okay, and remember your power posing. How you show up makes a difference. So if you know, check to see how you're sitting there, what you're doing in the group. And if you want to know more, I welcome you to contact me. Thank you. It's been an absolute pleasure to be here and to support my fellow Wildcats. Please contact me if there's anything I can do to support your success. And thank you, Cindric, and thank you, Aviva, for all your help today.
Thank you, Teresa. It was great. If there are any further questions, you have Teresa's email. Please follow up with her, as well as you can contact us here in the Career Lab, Alumni Careers, ArizonaAlumni.com/careers to find out more things going on within the Career Lab, Career and Professional Development Help. So, Cindric Steptoe, Director, signing off. Thank you, everyone. You also received the survey. Just make sure you go in and fill it out so we can be better in the future at doing these webinars and offering more opportunities for you as alumni. So thank you. Have a great night.